3 COVID-19 patients detected in areas surrounding Piliyandala and Borlasgamua. Several houses under quarantine. More than 1,000 from Bandaranaike Mawatha sent to quarantine centres. Taverns which opened yesterday closed until further notice today. National Election Commission informs party representatives that the commission will evaluate the possibility of holding elections before releasing the preferential numbers.
පාර්ලිමේන්තුව ඉබේම කැඳවෙන්න වෙනවා.
We honor very specially all those who lost their lives, those who are seriously injured, and all those who lost their loved ones, families that had been broken up. We are aggrieved that those responsible for governance at that time did not take seriously the repeated warnings received concerning these attacks, and so not only allowed this massacre to take place, but also sought to hide their culpability in different ways after the attack. Still more serious is the responsibility of all those who masterminded these attacks by planning, funding and encouraging the perpetrators, and deliberately covering up the facts of the case. Some of them surely knew this was coming, even though it is difficult to comprehend the will of God as a ray of hope that miracles do happen. I wish to mention that the Danish family who lost their children in the bomb attack has been blessed with twin girls on 11th March 2020. This indeed is a new beginning for them and a new hope for all of us that life is precious and we need to be responsible and live in harmony with one another.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa in a statement reiterated his pledge made in his policy statement Vistas for Prosperity that he will ensure the safety of all communities in the country. President Rajapaksa noted that he will not leave any room for any form of extremism or violence from any extremists to be unleashed on his people again, and assured that the true perpetrators responsible for the Easter Sunday massacres will be identified and brought before the law. The president said even though Catholics were targeted, it was a terrorist attack against all Sri Lankan citizens. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa lit a lamp at his Vijayarama residence and observed 2 minutes of silence in remembrance of those who lost their lives in the 2019 April 21st attacks. The wife of Prime Minister Rajapaksa and his staff members were present as well. Former opposition leader Sajith Premadasa remembered the victims of the April attacks at the opposition leader's office in Colombo. In a statement, Sajith Premadasa said the agenda which attempts to create hate and disunity among communities must be defeated. Former governor of the Western Province in Sri Lanka, Azad Saleh, has requested all citizens to stay strong and united and urged authorities to find those responsible for the attacks. He also urged the government to take all measures and to leave no stone unturned, bringing all culprits to account and to provide justice to the families and the country. St. Sebastian's Shrine Katuapitiya. Jude Prasad was handed the task of parading the effigy of Jesus Christ along the roads of Katuapitiya on that fateful day of Easter Sunday 2019. I am the person who designs the float which parades the statue of Jesus the Risen. I went to the church at 7:30 in the morning. As soon as the thanking speech ended, a loud noise was heard from the church. At that time, I thought a speaker or an amplifier burst. However, what Jude did not know at the time was that the loud thud heard from the church had taken away the lives of more than 115 people, including 7 members of his family. Jude lost all of his 5 children, his sister and his brother in this unforgiving attack.
ජූට්ට මතකද අයියව අන්තිමටම හම්බ වෙච්ච දවස?
මට හොඳට මතකයි. එදා ඇවිල්ලා සෙන්සුරා දවසක්.
I remember very well. It was a Saturday. We were talking about the salary of the workers. There is a pastry shop at Telvatta. My brother and I had a tea from there. When we returned home, he called me and asked me where I was. I told him I was home. That was the last time we spoke. He was a father figure to me.
ජූඩ් අහිතක් අමනාපයක් නැත්තම් අපිට කියන්න පුළුවන්ද? ඇත්තටම මේ දේවල් දරාගත්තේ කොහොමද?
I am in a lot of pain, even though I address the media. I lost my siblings and my kids. We fasted for 40 days, ate humble meals. We were prepared to feast on Easter Sunday. Today, Jude is only left with the memories of his loved ones. Jude is one of many people who carry the heartache of losing their loved ones in an untimely situation. However, that does not mean any person's grief is lesser than the other. Where is the victory in destroying the lives of innocent human beings or causing them eternal grief?
The 21st of April marks a dark day in Sri Lanka. Religious events were held across the island from all faiths to remember the lives lost following the tragic April 21st terror attacks. These religious events also hold as a reminder and a social responsibility that we as Sri Lankans must ensure that such tragic events will not take place in Sri Lankan soil ever again. We must also believe that all those responsible for these attacks must be brought before book and that justice will be served for the beautiful lives that were lost exactly 1 year ago.
Many events were held today across the island on the first year remembrance of the horrific April 21st attacks, and they were aimed at condemning cruelty while building communal harmony in the country. A special service was held at the Archbishop's house in Colombo today to commemorate the victims of the April 21st attacks. Those who praise their God by murdering and hating others are merely fooling themselves. You cannot love God without loving your neighbor. The St. Sebastian's Shrine in Katuapitiya is another religious site which fell prey to the attackers who carried out the April 21st attacks. A special service was held at the church this morning. Many citizens arrived opposite the St. Anthony's Shrine in Kochikade to honor those who lost their lives during the April 21st attacks. A large number of devotees who were at the Zion Church in Trincomalee on that fateful Sunday morning did not return to their homes. Candles were lit at the church today to remember those who lost their lives at the church. 31 people, including 14 children, lost their lives due to this attack. 86 people sustained injuries, while some are still in hospital. Many government institutions, private institutions, and the general public, especially the people of Batiklo, helped us to rebuild. Bells tolled and candles were lit at 8:45 a.m. today at the Ruan Valley Saya in Anuradhapura to commemorate those who lost their lives in the attacks. Following religious observances, we prayed for our country and the world never to go through such a sorrowful situation. We also blessed the victims of the attacks. Candles were lit at the premises of the Temple of the Tooth this morning during an event which was headed by the Diyavadana Nilame of the Temple of the Tooth in Kandy, Nilanga, Dala. The event was held to honor the victims of the April 21st attacks. A special sermon was held at the Jumma Masjid Mosque in Periyamulla Nigambo today in remembrance of those who lost their lives during the attack. The sermon was held only with the presence of several leaders of the mosque due to social distancing practices which are being followed at present. Murdering devotees of any religion and civilians at their own places of worship goes against the teachings of Islam. Those who engage in such acts are enemies of humanity. Victims of the April 21st attacks were honored during a special religious event held at the Sri Dandayudapani Hindu Kovil in Bhagavantalawa this morning.
அவர்களுடைய ஆத்ம திருப்தியடைய இப்பொழுது சிவபெருமானுடைய பாதத்திலே என்ன புண்ணியம் செய்தனோ என்பெருமான் என்று சொல்லக்கூடிய கூட்டுக்கு இயங்க இந்த சிவபெருமானுடைய பாதத்திலே அவர்கள் மோட்சம் அடைஞ்சு காசி ராமேஸ்வரம் சொர்க்கவாசல் என்று சொல்லப்படுகிற ஆத்ம திருப்தி அடைஞ்சு அடைந்து அவர்களுடைய ஆத்ம திருப்தியை பிரார்த்தனை பண்ணிக்கொள்வோம். தென்னாடேஸ்வரனே போற்றி எண்ணாட்டவர்க்கும் ரவா போற்றி.
Shangri-La Hotel in Colombo, one of the several hotels targeted by the April 21st bombers, held an event this morning in remembrance of those who lost their lives during the attack. Many religious activities and ceremonies had been organized island-wide to honor those who lost their lives in the attack.
දැනට අපරාධ පරීක්ෂණ දෙපාර්තමේන්තුව අත්අඩංගුවටගෙන විමර්ශනය යටතේ සැකකරුවන් 119
As of now, there are 119 suspects detained by the Criminal Investigations Department in connection to the April 21st terror attack investigations. Of this, 40 are on retention orders. 78 are at the Terrorism Investigation Division. Of these, 52 are being held and questioned. 3 teams at the TID are carrying out investigations.
ගැනීමේ නියෝග මත රඳවාගෙන විමර්ශන කටයුතු කරනවා. ත්‍රස්තවාදී විමර්ශන කොට්ටාශය
The Financial and Cyber Crimes Unit are also helping in these investigations. We will use technology in every way possible.
අක්ෂණ ක්‍රම පාවිච්චි කරනවා මේ විමර්ශන කටයුතු ඉදිරියට පවත්වාගෙන යාම සඳහා.
The International Commission of Jurists, issuing a statement on the arrest of attorney at law Hijaz Hizbullah, raised concerns about the arbitrary arrest and detention of the lawyer and called for the repeal and replacement of the Prevention of Terrorism Act.
The ICJ called upon the Sri Lankan authorities to respect human rights when conducting investigations into the April 21st attacks, while ensuring that investigations into the alleged involvement of attorney-at-law Hijaz Hizbullah are conducted in accordance with the due process and fair trial guarantees under international law. The ICJ added that the authorities must specify the charges against him, grant him full and immediate access to a lawyer, and investigate the circumstances of his arrest for potential rights violations.
Also in local news, 6 more patients tested positive for COVID-19 today, bringing the total number of confirmed cases reported from Sri Lanka to 310. Director General of Health Services confirmed that 5 of the 6 patients who tested positive for the virus today are residents of Bandaranayake Mawatha in Colombo 12, and the remaining individual is a resident of Varakapula. As of today, 100 patients have recovered from the virus.
1,020 people residing in Bandaranayake Mawatha, which comes under the Keselwatta Police Division in Colombo 12, were directed to quarantine today. This was after 31 people tested positive for the virus in the area yesterday. 2 more people from the area tested positive for the virus today. Bandaranayake Mawatha, Nafir Mawatha, Abdul Jabbar Mawatha and Old Moor Street are under strict surveillance at present.
ඊයේ දිනේ කොටහෙන බණ්ඩාරනායක මාවතින් රෝගීන් 31ක් වාර්තා වීමෙන් අනතුරුව
After 31 people tested positive for the virus in Bandaranayake Mawatha yesterday, we carried out tests on 91 residents. 5 tests showed positive results. Therefore, 1,020 area residents have been sent to quarantine centres. The Bandaranayake Mawatha is under complete lockdown. We will obtain samples from the residents of this area as well. We will very carefully monitor whether these people develop symptoms of the virus.
ප්‍රදේශයේ ඒ ජනතාවගේ රෝග ලක්ෂණ මතුවේදයි සම්බන්ධයෙන් සුපරීක්ෂාකාරීව සිටීම සඳහා සෞඛ්‍යාංශ ක්‍රියා කරගෙන යනු ලබනවා.
Among the people who tested positive for the virus yesterday, 2 were from Piliandala and Borlasgamua. The person who tested positive for COVID-19 today was a resident of Borlasgamua and was suffering from a kidney ailment. This patient and his son have been admitted to the National Institute of Infectious Diseases. Health officials said that 81 people who had come into contact with the person have been instructed to undergo self-quarantine. It has been revealed that this person had visited a private hospital recently to donate blood. Tests have been carried out on nurses attached to the private health facility visited by this person. We have issued instructions to close down the facility. Meanwhile, we have also made arrangements to send the family members of the victim from Piliandala and the people who had come into contact with him to a quarantine centre.
අද දිනේදී නිරෝධායන මධ්‍යස්ථානයකට යොමු කිරීමට අපි මේ මෙතත් කටයුතු කරමින් සිටිනවා.
The person from the Nivattidiya Gramodaya Mawatha in Piliandala who had contracted the virus is a fishmonger. Accordingly, Danuka Padmaraja, the medical health officer of Kahatudua, called on the customers who had purchased fish from a shop owned by the infected person to inform the relevant authorities for further action. Our correspondent reported that a blood test had been carried out on the wife of the patient today. The brother of the victim, who had returned from Australia, has undergone quarantine for 14 days. 78 people from 18 families who had been residing in the vicinity of the affected person's residence have been ordered to undergo self-quarantine. This person had been employed as a fishmonger. He had engaged in trading activities for 14 days in several areas. He had also sold fish by visiting homes in Dulan Mahara, Aberatna Mawatha and School Lane during the curfew. The people in these areas have been directed to undergo quarantine. At present, people from 18 families are undergoing quarantine at their homes. There are around 74 people. Based on the advice of the National Institute of Infectious Diseases, we hope to conduct PCR tests on those who had close contact with the patient.
ආශ්‍රිතයින් අපි ඔහු සමග ආශ්‍රය කර දින වකවානු අනුව වසංගත රෝග විද්‍යාංශයේ උපදෙස් පරිදි නියමිත කාලවකවානු අනුව PCR පරීක්ෂණයට යොමු කිරීමට බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
Meanwhile, the Palyagoda fish market was closed for retail trading today. The Navy undertook measures to disinfect the fish market as well.
Also, in related news, the government of Japan has provided a total sum of $1,212,500 through the United Nations Children's Fund, the International Organization for Migration, and the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies for tackling the novel COVID-19 in Sri Lanka. The government of Japan approved these assistances through the three international organizations on the 10th of March as part of an emergency response to the new coronavirus infection control, aiming to strengthen the capacities of developing countries, including Sri Lanka, in the fields of health and medical care. Issuing a release, the Japanese embassy said the government hopes the assistance will contribute effectively towards the prevention of the new coronavirus infection in Sri Lanka. Moving on to another local story, several problems arose in several areas today as well while distributing the 5,000 rupee allowance among the people.
Estate workers at the Moratti estate in Bogavantalawa surrounded the office of their Grama Niladhari today. We filled out the forms that they gave us and handed it over to them. They say that they have received funds to grant the allowance only among 75 people. There are 10 eligible voters in my house. Will the government be content with receiving just one vote from my home? No. Similarly, the 5,000 rupee allowance should be given among everyone. These are destitute people who have come from rural areas. They are saying that they cannot give us the allowance. That is unfair. If we have work at estates, then it's not a problem. However, due to the current situation, we have been asked to work only for a couple of days. The estate community of the Kirkoswald estate were deceived today as well. Police officers escorted the Grama Niladhari officer from the area. Residents of the Tulana, Olambata area in Kakirawa staged a protest demanding the 5,000 rupee allowance.
Former Minister Partali Champika Ranawaka expressed the following views.
Meanwhile, former Minister Partali Champika Ranawaka, convening a media briefing today, pointed out that the government had printed money to settle its expenses. The order is issued by the Secretary to the Finance Ministry stating that the President has the power on expenses under Article 150, Section 3 of the Constitution can be viewed as a violation to the Constitution from the 6th of March. However, due to the prevailing situation in the country, we never questioned this matter. During the period between the 14th March and the 14th of April, the government has printed more than 200 billion rupees, but only 20 billion rupees has been used to give away the 5,000 relief allowance. As per the Constitution, a new parliament should be established by the 2nd of June. There is no way of holding a parliamentary election before the 2nd of June. There is a constitutional issue. Just because they announced the election date as the 20th does not mean this issue will be solved.
තෙල් නිකන් ලබා ගන්න පුළුවන් තත්ත්වයක් රටේ තියෙනවා. හැබැයි මෙහි සෑම ඩීසල් ලීටරයකින්ම රුපියල් 90ක්, සෑම පෙට්‍රල් ලීටරයකින්ම ආසන්න රුපියල් 130ක් ලාභ ලබනවා.
Newsfirst made inquiries from the Secretary to the Finance Ministry, S.R. Artigala, on the claims of printing money. He said that money had not been printed in such large amounts as claimed by former Minister Partali Champika Ranawaka. However, he conceded that money had been printed to pay salaries of state sector servants and essential expenses of the government. The Finance Ministry Secretary pointed out that given the current situation of the pandemic, countries like the US have released 10% of the gross domestic product to the economy. Meanwhile, US oil prices crashed into negative territory for the first time in history yesterday as the evaporation of demand caused by the coronavirus pandemic has paved the way for a shortage in storage capacity. Though prices rebounded back above zero this morning, as of this evening, West Texas Intermediate futures, which has been the benchmark for the oil industry for decades, slumped to a negative of $1.86 per barrel. Former Minister Partali Champika Ranawaka spoke about the decline in global oil prices.
Oil prices in the US market for the first time in history declined to a negative value. We have the opportunity of obtaining oil with no charge at all. But here in Sri Lanka, the government is benefiting 130 rupees from every litre of diesel or petrol.
Leader of the Samagi Jana Balavegaya, Sajid Premadasa, speaking to WION News Network in India, spoke about the COVID-19 pandemic today.
As a country and as a member of the international community, I sincerely believe that it's not the time to point fingers and go for a blame game. I think all our energies, all our strategies should be mobilized, garnered, and targeted towards attacking this huge worldwide pandemic. Certainly, when one looks at various nation states, certain weaknesses and certain shortcomings may have taken place. However, I think right now we should focus not on pointing fingers. We should ensure that there is global leadership, the courage to take innovative decisions to come out of this huge disaster.
The National Elections Commission met with general secretaries and representatives of political parties to discuss matters pertaining to the upcoming general election. This discussion was held in two groups. While the parties who submitted nominations to contest the general elections from all electorates in the island met this morning, parties which had submitted nominations for a limited number of districts met with the Commission later in the afternoon. Following the meeting, party representatives stated that the Elections Commission agreed to reconsider the holding of elections on the 20th of June at a later date, depending on the situation in the country.
The chairman of the commission himself said that there is a possibility that this date may change. So we asked him to give us a cut-off as to when this date will be. The commission has decided to issue candidates their numbers on the 4th of May. So we asked that this be reviewed on the date. After reviewing either whether the date will remain or change. After reviewing, the commission will decide whether the date will remain or change. Party representatives expressed their views on the elections both at the Elections Commission and at other media briefings today. When the chairman of the commission spoke, we understood the difficulty he is facing in holding an election. He seems to have given a date as he has no choice. It was also implied in his speech that there may be a constitutional issue. If the parliament is not convened by the 2nd of June, the parliament will automatically reconvene. Elections are necessary, but we are not ready to conduct elections over dead bodies. This date has to come into play with 5 to 7 weeks for an election campaign to be conducted. So, when the Director General of Health Services can give us a full guarantee that the health situation is normal, then we are ready to start, even tomorrow. The curfew will be lifted on the 27th in Colombo. We have no confidence that will even happen or that we can return to an election. We can't be certain that this election will take place on the 20th. That depends on the state of the health situation in the country at that time. We asked whether the health authorities, the Triforces, the police and Dr. Anil Jasinghe has granted the go-ahead. The answer was no. How can we move forward like this?
The
date has been set as the 20th. However, the National Elections Commission has the right to reconsider this decision, taking into account the health crisis in the country, and the Commission said it will do so. What is important is to ensure all parties will be able to contest the election democratically. My view is that if the health crisis in the country is receding, the issue is their fear to face the election.
They
have set a date for the election violating the constitution. He himself, in a letter addressed to the President, informed the latter that setting the election after the 2nd of June is illegal. Against such a backdrop, it paves the way for an authoritarian environment.
මේ අවකාශයක් මේ රටේ උදා වෙන අවදානමක් ඇති වෙලා තිබෙනවා.
As per the constitution of this country, if we fail to hold a parliamentary election, the President, along with his cabinet and other state members, have the opportunity to take this country forward. However, we believe that by the 20th of June, we as a country would have overcome this health crisis and everything would have returned to normalcy, where we could hold a parliamentary election and establish a new government.
The new election date was extensively discussed on Face the Nation program last night.
That the Election Commission made today, the proclamation that the President made on the 2nd of March dissolving Parliament has become ineffective and invalid, because that proclamation the President can make only under one strict condition, and that strict condition imposed by the Constitution is that within 3 months of that declaration, that proclamation, a new Parliament must convene. It is only under that condition he can make that proclamation, and if that cannot be met for whatever the reason, his proclamation becomes invalid.
Journalists questioned the former MP as to whether the dissolved Parliament could be re-established.
The Constitution is very, very specific that the country cannot be without a Parliament for longer than 3 months. So for whatever reason, if that is breached, then his declaration, his proclamation dissolving Parliament becomes invalid. The Parliament that is dissolved will come in, spring back to life.
I don't think the mere fact that the Election Commissioner declared a new date invalidates the dissolution of Parliament by the President. I don't agree on that, because the Election Commissioner has a specific purpose, and that is to hold elections free and fair in the country. And the mere fact that he determines that the election should be held on the 20th of June doesn't in any way derogate the powers of the President.
We can get experience when we go to 1989 election. So during that time, what is the position of the country? So the JVP problems were there. So though there were problems, 1989 election was held. So how they campaign it? So now electronic media is there, Facebook is there, and then the papers are there. And on that basis, we have to adjust our campaign in such a way that the people will, the message will go to people.
Yes, the people elected the President. Yes, they elected the President. They did not elect Gotabaya Rajapaksa to be the Parliament also. Parliament is a separate institution. Here, I want to make a very clear statement. I want to place the blame on wanting to have the elections this early in this indecent hurry solely at the feet of the President.
Face the Nation is broadcast on TV1 every Monday at 9:30 p.m. right after our primetime news bulletin. You can also join the Saturn political program on our sister channel Sirasa TV at 10:30 p.m. tonight.
Sri Lanka Bodhijana Peramuna, Susil Premachan, Samki Janapalabekya, Ajit P. Pereira, Janata Vimukti Peramuna, Sunil Haduneti, Demula Jatika Sandhanaya, M.A. Sumantiran Samaga, Deshapalniya ha Rati Hitadavasa, Satana, Ada Ratri Dahai Theatre.
Welcome back to the news. Still in local news, Director General of the Election Secretariat Saman Sri Ratnayaka said the upcoming general election is estimated to cost a whopping 7 billion rupees.
The
Treasury had allocated 7 billion rupees for the 2020 general election based on the estimate we had submitted to them. The National Elections Commission handed over this estimate before the outbreak of the coronavirus. However, we believe that we will have to incur a higher cost considering the current situation in the country. We should introduce a special mechanism to ensure the safety of election officials and the voters by taking into account the current situation surrounding COVID-19 and the social distancing regulations in place. We hope to consult the Director General of Health Services and obtain his advice on how we should conduct the election. We will also focus on the health measures that we would have to implement. When the virus started spreading, we imported 50,000 face masks from India for employees at our main office and district offices. However, we will have to incur additional expenses to provide the same to those at voting centres, counting centres and officials of other state departments involved in the process. So I feel that we might have to ask for more funds from the Treasury.
The general election is once again discussed as the National Elections Commission announced that the postponed parliamentary election will be held on the 20th of June. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa expressed the following views with regard to the election and reconvening parliament yesterday.
ව්‍යවස්ථානුකූලව පාර්ලිමේන්තුව විසුරුවා මාස 3ක් ඇතුළත නව පාර්ලිමේන්තුව රැස්විය යුතුය.
The new parliament should be convened 3 months after dissolving parliament constitutionally. Accordingly, the new parliament should convene on the 3rd of June. It is the Independent Election Commission which postponed the election that should decide on the date of the poll. The Independent Election Commission can decide on conducting the election considering the current situation in the country. If necessary, they can conduct the election across several days. I will not exert influence on the Independent Election Commission to conduct or postpone the election. I declared the new date on which the new parliament would convene in a constitutional manner. If an election is not held by the 2nd of June and if the new parliament is not elected, I will not have the powers to convene parliament. The law does not expect me to do the impossible. However, I do not have a need to reconvene parliament under any circumstances. The new parliament can be convened only if the election is conducted.
ඒ නව පාර්ලිමේන්තුව කැඳවිය හැක්කේ ඡන්දයකින් නව මන්ත්‍රීවරුන් තෝරාගත්තොත් පමණයි.
We now move into a short commercial break.
රජය විසින් නිර්දේශ කර ඇති මූල්‍යමය සහන පිළිබඳ වැඩි විස්තර සඳහා ආචාර්ය බැංකුවේ විශේෂිත ඇමතුම් මධ්‍යස්ථානය හා සම්බන්ධ වන්න 0112 481 356 0112 421 501 0112 326 130 0112 392 307 අමතන්න.
Welcome back to the news. With the lifting of curfew today, public transport services resumed in several areas. However, some groups failed to adhere to the health guidelines.
All public transport services were inspected by the police in the Bibila area today. Many commuters were not wearing face masks. Footage obtained by Newsfirst shows how some transport services failed to adhere to the health guidelines by exceeding the number of passengers on board. 2 train services from Kandy and Mahava arrived at the Pulgahavala train station today. Newsfirst correspondents reported that only a few passengers were on board the trains. All buses leaving the Kanduruwela bus station were inspected today to identify whether the buses carried the correct number of passengers as recommended by the health authorities. Subsequently, individuals who failed to adhere to health guidelines were removed from the buses.
The government today notified that all liquor shops are to remain closed until further notice. Our reporters stated that even at the point of this notification being published, queues opposite liquor shops remained long. A large number of people were gathered outside this liquor shop in Hambantota earlier this morning. They were not following any health measures, including social distancing practices. The Hambantota police arrived at the scene to control the situation. The Hambantota police arrested one individual who bought 40 bottles of alcohol from a liquor store. Police stated that this individual who had bought the bottles to service a rest house in Suryavava will be presented to the Hambantota magistrate. The Galewala police have uncovered a scam where individuals are purchasing alcohol from stores in the Galewala town and selling it to villagers for exorbitant prices. A suspicious three-wheeler had been stopped and inspected based on a tip-off received by the officer in charge of the Galewala police, and they had discovered 150 bottles of alcohol and 100 cans of beer. 3 suspects have been arrested in connection to the incident. Police yesterday confiscated 156 bottles of alcohol being transported in a luxury vehicle travelling from Alauwa to Maharachimulla. The suspicious vehicle was inspected based on a tip-off received and was inspected near the Alauwa town. Meanwhile, an individual was arrested in Bibila this morning for selling alcohol even after the government had issued a notice banning the sale of alcohol within the country. Even though the liquor stores in Hatton remained closed today, these images show how locals lined up in front of liquor stores in Hatton. Till the 29th of April for allegedly attempting to assault a police inspector inside the Variapala police station while investigating an illicit liquor racket. The suspect had accompanied a person with alleged links to the racket when he had been summoned to the police station for threatening a police officer via a telephone call. The police inspector has been hospitalized after the suspect had pushed and attempted to assault him.
Meanwhile, 113 Sri Lankan students who were trapped in Pakistan were brought back to Sri Lanka this evening. They arrived in the island aboard Sri Lankan Airlines flight UL1206. The parents of these students earlier requested the government to ensure their children are safely brought to the country. After considering the request, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa instructed the officials to take necessary steps to bring those students back to Sri Lanka. Also in local news, up next is a footage captured on a CCTV camera of a horrific road accident which took place. The Nagitimu Sri Lanka theme song was created to inculcate a positive mindset within the people of Sri Lanka. We leave you tonight with the Nagitimu Sri Lanka song for the News First team. I'm Dasniya Thalda, along with our interpreter tonight, Brian De Cruz. Good night.
Sri Lanka
සිතුවොත් රැකගන්නට ලංකා
දුරුවී ව්‍යසන අප ඉදිරියේ ඇති බාධක ජය ගන්වා
නැගිටිමු ශ්‍රී ලංකා
අපි නැගිටිමු ශ්‍රී ලංකා
மாற்றம் காணாத மனித பண்புகள் நீந்திடும் ஸ்ரீலங்கா.
Time for us to hope and pray and heal our motherland.
We must unite and march ahead. Arise, Sri Lankans now. Yendada Sri Lanka.
Rise up, Sri Lanka.
Anduru wala pata atarin hinehi negitimu Sri Lanka. Saka Sanka Badaka Atarin Nagitimu Sri Lanka.
Hitamu Ibiriyama Kavanna Hema Nagitimu Sri Lanka.
Hita Idiwana Navaloka Hamue Nagitimu Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka. Rise up Sri Lanka. Nagitimu Sri Lanka. Api Nagitimu Sri Lanka.
Gammetta Nagitimu Sri Lanka.